Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. What an honor to be here at CPAC. Thank you to all of you for being here today and for what you're doing for our country. I'm the president of the American Enterprise Institute. We spend our days, sometimes our nights, looking at the biggest problems facing our country. And I'd like to stand up here and say for the next few minutes, you know, we're winning everything, but the truth is we're not. And I want to talk to you a little bit about why and what we can do. And I'm going to start by telling you a story that I think sums up the problem. There's an economist like me, goes out for a drive in the country to get away from it all and gets lost. All he can find is a farmhouse on the side of the road, so he stops to ask for directions. The farmer gives him directions, says, "Oh, I see city guys like you all the time." Gives him directions back to Washington, D.C. The economist is grateful, but before he turns to leave, he looks and notices there's a field of sheep by the side of the house. Now, he's always on the lookout for a profit-making opportunity, being an economist. So he says, "Sir, I tell you what, let's make a wager. If I can tell you the exact number of sheep in your field, can I have one?" The farmer says, "That's ridiculous. You could never tell me in 10 seconds how many sheep there are. You're on." Well, the economist has a few tricks up his sleeve and processes a complicated mathematical heuristic and says, "You, sir, have 863 sheep. Now, the farmer says, "That's amazing. That's exactly right. I don't know how you knew that, but I'm as good as my word. Go pick one out." The economist goes into the field, picks the one out he likes, and is going back to his car when the farmer says, "Just a second. Before you leave, I have a wager for you. If I can tell you what you do for a living, can I have my sheep back?" Now, the economist says, "There's no way you could know that. You've only just met me. Sure, you're on." The farmer says, "You, sir, are an economist." He says, "That's amazing. How did you know that?" The farmer says, "Simple. You got all the numbers right, but you're walking off with my dog." I like that because it sums up the problem we have today in the conservative movement. We're getting all the numbers right, but we're getting the big point wrong. We're great at finding evidence that capitalism brings economic growth, but we're not so good at translating that evidence into the real world of people's lives and convincing our friends around the country that the free enterprise system is not just best for American prosperity, but is the most moral system. So what is a moral system? That's important for everybody, not just for liberals. Fairness is part of a moral system to everybody. We all know that. President Obama knows that and is clearly making the case for fairness in every speech he gives. He says we have a fairness crisis in this country. And you know what? He's right. Unfairness surrounds us. Think about it. Every day we're building a crushing burden of debt for our kids. That's not fair. We're becoming a country with a privileged class of bureaucrats that makes more than their private sector counterparts in wages and benefits. That's not fair. We're creating a tax and regulatory burden on new businesses that makes it impossible for poor people to get ahead on their hard work and merit. That's not fair. And most unfair of all, in my view, is the special access deals and bailouts to crony corporations who have clever lobbyists and access to the government. That's not fair. Now, you know as well as I do that that's not the fairness that the president's talking about. He's talking about the unfairness, in his view, of income inequality and the fact that the wealthy legally keep too much of their money. Here are his words from the University of Michigan 2 weeks ago. "When it comes to paying our fair share, I believe if you make more than $1 million a year, then you should pay a tax rate of at least 30%. On the other hand, if you decide to go into a less lucrative profession, if you decide to become a teacher, if you decide to go into public service, if you decide to go into a helping profession, then your taxes shouldn't go up." Now, there's a lot to be offended by in what I just said, which is what the president said. First of all, why is it not fair what the rich are paying? You all know here that the top 5% of earners pay 59% of federal taxes. When will it be fair? 75%? 95%? Will it be fair then? My guess is that it still won't be fair. Also, I urge you to join me in being offended by what the president calls a helping profession. That is to say, if you're successful in business and create a lot of jobs, that's apparently not a helping profession. So there's a lot to object to in the president's words, but let's think about fairness for a second. Fundamentally, what he means by fairness is taking income away from people who are wealthy so that we are all more equal. Why? Because he believes that Americans have not truly earned their way. It's fair to penalize prosperity if it wasn't earned. I disagree with this, and I bet you do too. Real fairness comes from rewarding merit and allowing people to keep more of what they earn. Why? Because the free enterprise system in America, it's not perfect, but fundamentally it rewards hard work, innovation, healthy ambition, and personal responsibility. This is a disagreement over the definition of fairness, and it's a clash of visions of our country. Do we want to be a nation of achievement and aspiration, or do we want to be a country of envy? Do we want to be a country of redistribution? The answer to that question is how we define fairness. Now, we know the president's definition of fairness. Let's think just for a quick second about how our founders defined fairness. In his first inaugural address, Thomas Jefferson laid out a vision of a, as you know, and you know these words as well as I do, a wise and frugal government which shall restrain men from injuring one another, but shall also leave them free to regulate their own pursuits of industry and improvement, and shall not take from the mouth of labor the bread it has earned. In just 200 years, think what's happened. We've gone from a president who thought that fairness meant letting you keep what you earn, to a president who thinks it's fair to take it away from you because you earned it. That happened in 200 years. Now, most of our ancestors were not as eloquent as Thomas Jefferson. Mine weren't. But let's think what they did, which was even more profound than Thomas Jefferson. My ancestors came over here risking everything. They were immigrants. So were most of yours. Why did they come here? Did they come here for a fairer system of forced government income redistribution? They came to this country because they wanted to be rewarded on their merit. Think about what your grandparents would say if they could see what the president is doing today. They might as well not even come here, and they might not have. For too long, President Obama and American liberals have claimed the moral high ground on fairness. Meanwhile, conservatives talk about economic growth rates and balanced budgets. And believe me, I love those subjects. I am a professional economist. But people assume that we don't care about fairness. We can't avoid the argument, and we shouldn't, because we can win it. It's time to take back the definition of fairness on behalf of our founders, on behalf of your ancestors, and your kids. It's time to demand a fair country with fair policies. We should be the ones out there saying fairness before the president. We should say, in a fair America, we reject a tax code with special deals for crony capitalists. In a fair country, we don't bail out corporations and individuals that make stupid, risky decisions. We don't pay bureaucrats better than private sector employees because they have more power. And we don't steal from our children. That's a fair country. In a fair America, we don't reward takers, we reward makers. That's why our founders struggled. So here's my last word. This is the fight of our lifetimes for free enterprise. We're in the fight of our lifetime for America's culture. This is not an economic battle. We can't talk about it that way. This is a moral battle, and it has to be won on moral terms. President Obama understands this, and he thinks we don't. He's counting on us to keep counting the sheep and walking off with the dog. He's counting on you to make that error. We have to have a better definition of fairness and use it. So take the fight to the redistributionists. Demand a fair economy and a fair country. Tell all of our presidential candidates that their campaigns have to be fundamentally about a fair country, and make the president defend his definition of fairness, that it's all about taking from the makers. And then after you do this, prepare to win. Thank you.